virtual reality, you see like a
Like
gate
more of a gate
or something.
man,
It's
that's
really
cool.
amazing.
It's crazy what they can do with that now, though.
Dude, where is this
insane.
going?
Where is it
Where
going?
are we going? Oh, but
So, thanks for coming, by the way.
hey, man,
It was
it's a
short
pleasure.
notice,
Man, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
One of our last coffees together. I
Dude,
think,
I'm
before.
gonna miss you, man. The tears. No, but yeah, because we've been having these conversations with our friends and with our friends' friends, and kind of going around talking about some of the most heaviest topics. I mean, all right, God, the topic of God is really heavy, you know.
Yeah.
So it's.
But you were telling me a little bit the other day that you had started preparing like a presentation because you've had these conversations with a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And so you've started preparing a presentation like to present at universities and schools.
Initially, I started doing for universities and schools and stuff like that, And then it was more like one-on-one and then groups, you know, and then so you can get direct feedback while you're doing it. And it was very, very interesting.
So what's the feedback been like?
It has been very dynamic. It has been very dynamic and very different. Initially, when I started this, the point was to kind of bring a third perspective into the debate of the existence of God and non-existence of God. I had been seeing kind of like, it was almost like a fight, and people weren't really finding new ways of discovering truth. It was like the same old ways. Who can present that in the most violent or the most convincing or the most, who can get more applause and stuff like that, you know?
What's a third way of presenting that topic, man? It seems
I mean, like, people we always assume that there's no way of merging two realities or bringing a third perspective. And growing up in Norway with a family, we're Baha'is, and we've always been encouraged to have this type of spiritual, existential conversations that are relevant to like expanding our human consciousness, understanding ourselves, understanding even the sciences that we do. And growing up in Norway, they're not very religious. You know, that type of thing it's not. You don't just enter class and go like, you know, I got a thing to tell you about God.
Yeah.
You know, that's not. So it's kind of like bottled up conversation. So as I got older, I just thought, all right, maybe if we can try to present an idea that brings a lot of the parts of both sides in, and maybe use a basis that we can all agree on, and maybe move further from there. Yeah.
So have you presented this in any other place other than Norway, or?
I presented it at the summer school in Norway, where there were a lot of friends, a lot of Baha'is, but also a lot of people of different faiths and agnostics and atheists and stuff like that. And I presented it with, it's mostly in Norway, of course, but people not necessarily from Norway. So you get the dynamic backgrounds and thoughts and ideas. It has been like almost 150 plus people personally on it. So
it gives you a little bit of an idea
a lot of
of
data.
how.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I feel with the topic of God, it's a topic we're never going to exhaust. I mean, it's not like we're going to get to a final definitive answer, no?
Yeah, exactly.
So are we really looking for an answer, or are we looking to explore, or like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think...
Because we all talk as if we know what this is about.
Yeah.
Like, we all talk as if we know that God exists, we know that God doesn't exist, we have the proof, you know?
Yeah.
But can we actually prove something that big if it does exist? You know?
I think as a religious person, as a person who does believe in God, I understand first, as my first premise, that God can never, ever, ever be proven, nor ever physically experienced. But that doesn't mean that we can't know if there is a God, you know? Because you won't necessarily experience something that you've learned about in school, about space or quantum physics, doesn't necessarily mean that those things don't exist. So rather than thinking...
Nor does it mean that you shouldn't actually
investigate
it or pursue it.
So I think the same way that there's a question to everything, there's an answer to everything. Sometimes the answer is the question, and sometimes the path to finding the answer is the answer itself. You know, but I think something like God, we kind of all agree to a degree that understanding and finding or concluding the existence of God will kind of change everything. A lot of our purposes and understandings, whether it's about the material world or our personal lives, is hinged on the concept of if there is a God or not. Because those two things kind of present two very different realities. So I like to say that we use sciences and we use arts and we use all these things to, if the goal is to present and understand God's existence, to rather understand the conditions around him. That, the logos of life, that can point to a reality of a deity, So that is what we have to kind of look for. We kind of have to look for footsteps in the forest, You see footsteps, human footsteps, you don't assume a fox, you assume a person. So that's maybe the first focus to go towards.
What does the fox say, by the way? Isn't that group from Norway?
Yeah, it's from Norway. But yeah, you see, so even our music is getting there without us knowing. Yeah.
So when we approach this topic, would you say that we can approach it like any other topic, or is it something that we have to have a slightly different approach to the topic of, just from your experience and the conversations that you've had?
Well, as I mentioned, the whole thing that got me started was the idea that it became very violent. The whole thing became very violent. And whatever, it's not the topic itself. The topic may have a certain charge in it, but it's the way we approach it that kind of defines where the conversation is going. You may be talking about architecture. You may be talking about music. And if you kind of have like a proper relationship and respect and humility in that conversation will be pleasant. And you will find, some new things that you'll discover. If you don't even like the person, if you have prejudice with the person, if you have all these things, that conversation is bound to, go wrong. Entering a conversation with the premise that I'm right, or entering the conversation with,
We never do that, do we?
No, well, I think you're wrong. I think...
No, I think I'm right. I think we never do that, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A religious person would, if I was non-religious and you were religious and you told me that you were a Christian or a Muslim, well, no matter how free of prejudice I strive to be, I kind of automatically put 10,000 years of religious baggage on your shoulders. I kind of go that means he must really agree with everything, every superstition, every dogma, and then suddenly the things you're telling me, I'm putting in a completely different charge. And we're in two different playing fields now.